to begin, I would like to thank the Muse. Thank you to Program Manager Susan Deutsch and the Muse Executive Director Michael Candelwall for saying yes to these programs that will help us celebrate April 2021 NaPoMo, or National Poetry Month. Just very quickly, I'd like to encourage everyone to check out the Muse Writers Center. The Muse is one of the largest literary centers in the country, offering online and in-person creative writing classes of all genres for all levels and all ages. Our new Winter-Spring 2021 schedule is already online at the-muse.org, so be sure to check them out. And all the workshops are currently virtual due to the pandemic. The Muse offers tuition assistance for everyone that needs it. We don't turn anyone away. And the Muse has given away almost $30,000 in tuition assistance last year because the Muse does not want anything getting in the way of someone who wants to learn to write. I guess I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Luisa A. Igloria. I teach in the MFA program at ODU, and I also teach at the Muse Writers Center. And since my July 2020 appointment as Poet Laureate of Virginia, I've made it part of my commitment to work with others to create programs and projects that will help center the rich diversity of poets and poetry in Virginia. And I'm very excited to have these programs for April 2021 National Poetry Month, or NaPoMo. This two-reading series is titled Poems for Our Living and Breathing. And for this series, I've invited poets to share work that speaks in some way to poetry's role in civic engagement and in the world at large. That is, poems connected to the important idea of how we live in history as beings among others. And I think of these poems as addressing more than social justice or race, though there is without a doubt a greater urgency to give language to these important and difficult subjects. I see poems of civic engagement as poems of deep listening and attention, with a goal not being just the writing or reading of such poems, but their offering as places where we might return to try again and again to have those deeper and more intimate conversations with each other about how we live, about how to live as beings among others, and also as a way to continue to being a witness to and in this world that we all live in. So today's program features poets from the Poetry Society of Virginia. And the Poetry Society of Virginia is an organization which since 1923 has worked to advance the cause and appreciation of poetry throughout the state. It sponsors annual contests, it holds local and regional festivals and events, publishes an anthology of prize-winning poems, and offers the annual Poetry Society of Virginia North American Book Award. And it is led by a president and 7 regional vice presidents who are among today's readers. And Henry Hart, immediate past Poet Laureate of Virginia from 2019 to 2020, will close the main portion of this program, after which we will have a brief open mic. Please find each poet reader's bio and links on the Muse event page for our program. And now, before turning it over to my friends in the Poetry Society, I'd like to offer a short poem of my own to start. It's a fairly new poem which looks back at this weird and surreal past year. And it also looks a little bit at other times in the past like it, and turns tentatively toward what might lie ahead. And the poem is called Holding Pattern. We type in our orders on the computer, and in less than 2 hours, a shopper comes to leave groceries on the doorstep. What a privilege it is to still be able to have bread and eggs, bananas, salad greens, some kind of meat, without needing to leave the safety of our homes. We remember in the 90s how military forces joined a coalition at the start of the Gulf War, and panic rippled into our small city in the hills. This is it, neighbors said, World War III. Store shelves emptied as people panicked. Canned goods, paper products, oil and sugar and salt. What a miracle to find even a small bag of rice, a tin of sardines. Sudden wealth in a handful of yellow potatoes, a longer stretch of days. Even so, we know somewhere else, not even a grain remains, not even a soup bone in the larder. An endlessness has gone by. Some of us give thanks we haven't whittled completely down to bone. Some of us count our stores. Some put away the bowls that others used to eat from when they were still here among us, holding out for days that stretched into more than a year. So it is my pleasure now to turn over the virtual stage to our first Poetry Society of Virginia reader, Terry Cox-Joseph, who is the current president. Terry.
Hello, and thank you for having us all. I see so many familiar faces, and it's wonderful to be here. Oh, I see one who's actually laughing. The contest is now over. It has been judged. I am sending out announcements and getting everything on social media and emails with a lot of help from people. Thank you so much. And that ceremony will be on the 24th at 10 a.m. So my poems have to do with exactly what Sophia was talking about. One is about our commonalities divided by government and politics, and the other one is about our differences. One embrace. On the family reunions between the Koreas, 2014. Snow drips like ashes upon the mountain, tenuous class between North and South. Today, the god Sanchin smiles. One embrace must last a lifetime. 100 eyes search for faces no longer familiar, yet Hart still recognizes Hart. Cherished gifts pass hands, creased family photos, aspirin, choco pies, no love notes. The written word spells danger. Ladies' pink and green hanbok fabric rustles. Men in suits bow. Fathers rush to hold grown children, as yet unseen. Sisters fall together. Wails rise, anguish and joy entwined. Wizened mother clutches metal arms of her wheelchair, bone-thin wrists strain. Grandfather, weightless as sparrow, lies on a stretcher. Through it all, soldiers listen, with ears that feed on suspicion like stolen grain. Outsiders imagine some whose voices offer hard stones of gratitude that gouge their tongues. Wrinkled uncle in pressed gray suit set aside for this hour, skims a knuckle across his tears, bows to thank Supreme Sun Ruler for his mercy and blessing. But gratitude seeks an object like a dancer drawn to the pipa lute, and truth quivers like a giant ginkgo leaf on the edge of time. The second one is called Freak Show. 1. I met a man with no arms and no legs. He spun his torso on an upright Coke bottle at the freak show on the Midway. A child, I'd never heard of thalidomide, DES, dioxins, alphabet soup of pharmaceutical failures. All I knew was that he scared me, hopping on the stage like that, up and down on the upright mouth of a Coke bottle, stomach muscles rippling, eyes bulging. Lured, I inched closer. Noah was nearly brushing the stage. Boo! He leaped at me, threw back his head, laughed, popped his eyes out, left, then right, veins bulging, grotesque, playing me like a midway game he'd won again and again. I recoiled, nearly fell back into the crowd, and when he ceased his freakish antics, he turned his gaze once more to me with a look that bordered on pity. He hadn't meant to scare me, not really, just a show, just fun. 2. The man on the Coke bottle haunted my dreams. I confided in my father. My words spewed pity like air-fired balls in an arcade. He nodded, pursed his lips, replied, "He's got a job. What would you do? Sit home and feel sorry for yourself?" I flinched as if my father had been spinning on a Coke bottle. How much do you pay a man with no arms and no legs to teach gawkers about pity? And now I will introduce Bill Glose.
Hello, everyone. So I'm the current president pro tem, which means if Terry was unable to continue, that I would step in for her position. I'm also the secretary for our executive meetings. The poem I'm going to read today is "A White Man Tries to Understand Black Lives Matter." So hard to slip into someone else's skin when that very skin prescribes a universe of difference. The fact that it shouldn't bears little weight on scales of actual consequence. So easy to believe racial profiling is imaginary when every cop I've ever encountered protects and serves with a smile. When liberty is as common as the air I breathe, there's no reason to ponder industrious lungs and all they do to ease my way, unless they start to complain, unless they rattle their cage of bone, unless they stab the very chest they call home. Then, if blood were to bubble up in the froth of my phlegm, then I too would scream that something got to change. Every horizon should be as glorious as the one viewed from my ivory tower. Bathed in the soft glow of my lamp, I watch riots unfold on television as talking heads babble, capped teeth and perfect coiffures contrasting the mayhem. My roots are Irish and Pennsylvania Dutch. I want to shout from the window, "It's not my fault. I didn't do anything." Oh, the double edge of that sword. I didn't do anything. Up here, high above the clouds, it's hard to fathom the war raging around the base of this monument, which trembles as crowds try to topple it. Fury wreathes words that rise from below. White silence equals white consent. Being Black shouldn't be a death sentence. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Now, a virus stalks the land, colorblind. It doesn't care about heritage or the hue of crayons in your box. And as I check the daily counts of sick and dying, as I Purell my hands and cinch a mask tight over my mouth and nose, it occurs to me that maybe this is what it feels like. Worried about stepping outside, scared I might lose my life through no fault of my own, just for driving to the store, just for shopping, just for trying to take a breath. And I will now pass it over to the former President Pro Tem, Derek Kannemeyer.
Thanks, Bill. Hello, I'm Derek Kannemeyer. As Bill says, I'm the outgoing Pro Tem. I'm just finishing my 9th year on the board of the Poetry Society of Virginia. After 4 years as president of the Central Region, vice president of the Central Region, and then parliamentarian, and then 4 years of Pro Tem. So this is my goodbye, I suppose. And I'm going to start with a piece called Mission, which is not exactly about civil engagement, but is about copping out. As I slept, God came to me with a mission. He asked me to renounce my worldly goods, to live among the poor and minister them. And in my dream, I answered him saying, Lord, what a wonderful dream. How astonishing it would be to be that kind of person, the kind the Lord God in person might come to in a vision with a mission. But Lord, I'm a humble poet of no great consequence, so I know that you're not really you, Lord, and this is only a wonderful dream. And in my dream, God thought for a moment and answered, fair enough. In the morning, I remembered all of it, and as I told it to my friends, I chuckled. That afternoon, a dog ran up to me. He barked, and it sounded like language. Tonight I shall come again, it yapped. This time have faith. And that night, as I slept, God came with a different mission. Go to a place of war and famine, he said, and help its people, just where and how you may choose, for the need is great, but preach to them my message. And in my dream, I answered him saying, God, you're making fun of me. First, you wish me to believe a street dog is addressing me in language. Then when I'm stupid with sleep and might not notice, you change my mission and are fuzzy on the particulars. I'm only a humble poet, Lord, but I know a voice so wishy-washy can't be yours. Which God considered and said, fair enough. The next day, on my TV, an actor turned to the camera saying, see you tonight. And when I thumbed up another channel, a different voice off screen cried, oh my God. And on a third station, a mother rose to kiss a child, cooing, next time, listen. So that night when God came again asking, now do you believe? I did not argue, but answered him. I guess that depends, Lord, on what exactly you would have me do. I see, God said. Well then, sleep peacefully, and in the morning, pour some fresh squeezed orange juice and write this poem. Now that's, I said, more like it. And for my second piece, I wasn't sure what I was going to read. It would depend on what I picked up. This is a poem I was working on today. So it's brand new and it's surely not finished. I've been working for the last year on a book of photographs of the statue dismantlings in Richmond with about, it's about, I suppose, 2/3 photograph and 1/3 prose commentary. And so I've been visiting the statues regularly and taking photographs. And this is called At the Lee Memorial, Richmond, fall 2020 to April 2021. Part 1, they are the authorized personnel. They have fenced in the site and posted keep out signs. So when the word comes, they will be ready. They have dismantled the hoops, the tagged backports, Black Lives Matter, say her name, say his name. They have tidied what seems to be trash, conserving what is museum, sparing the flower beds and the vegetable plots as artifacts. 2, they are the fall gardeners. Such hope they had back then when this was a living temple. They feared nothing that might be thrown at them. Like the Lee apologists vowing appeal after appeal, they were here for the long haul, to plant, to tend, to harvest. Their raised beds, great with seeds, unfurled like banners, they made of their green hope a daily fuss. 3. They are the April winds. Today, 3 months later, the winds have done a number on it. They pry up the plastic sheeting, it flails at the iron stakes. They fondle and fan the weeds into a wild glory. They tweak the pink noses of hyacinths who have too many noses. They grab at whatever else sprouts and yank its hair. They snatch at the corners of posters, pick free and toss some. 4, the last part. They are the laminated case histories. There were dozens of them staked in the grass at the verge of the plinth. Say their names, say these names, they pleaded. They bore witness. We bent, we read. A few have been harried loose to pace the cage. A couple have flown the coop entirely. They lie face up, face down, in the street, the way dead Black folks do. And I'd like to pass the torch to Kathleen Decker, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Derek. So I have 2 poems. The first one was written not with the United States in mind. I love the fact that we are a democracy, albeit an extremely messy one. So this poem is in honor of places which are different. It's called Censored. Censored voices turn to poems in the silence between the lines, between sparse words, cries for help, for tolerance, for peace, for breath. Cries of anger, fear, and love, hidden in poems of nature, obscure illusions to tempests, floods, and fire. Poetry is like life. How you read it. Share the air. And my second poem was written more with Louise's instructions about empathy in mind. And so this is not perfectly society-wide empathy, but rather somewhat specific, but it's probably international. 16. 16 is supposed to be sweet. She sits in front of her laptop, gaming online, preferring avatars to her acne-covered face. She has internet friends who may or may not be real. No boy braves the many rules and restrictions from her clueless parents. COVID-19 has shut down the mall crowds and sleepovers with the girls. So, refuge and homework, extra reading, writing sad poems, fantasizing quietly of adult freedom. She tries not to show jealousy when a friend asks advice about which date to accept to a prom to which she is not invited. I wish I could show her the woman she'll become, strong, beautiful, smart, and happy. I was 16 once, too. And I'll turn it over to Catherine Fletcher. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I work on outreach and communications. I was inspired by Luisa's idea that we are our own living, breathing monuments. This first poem is a celebration of the Native American ironworkers who risked their lives to build some of our most famous skyscrapers. It's called High Steel. Windows beside windows, windows within frame. Blind windows reflect spires and towers' surface glimmer, conceals stories of giants beneath. Eye to eye with hawks, cloudmen climbed, no harness, fired by metal. They floated along foot-wide girders in weather, high hundreds above Gotham's pulsating streets. Sing of them. Sing of brothers, born of rivers, born of flint, brothers who trod the wind, whose hands heaved beams and base plates, slammed hot rivets into holes of steel and iron, They begat Empire State, begat Triborough Bridge, begat world trade, transmuting capital into dreams. Behind the famous silver print skyline, beyond the city's confabulating reveries, soar the measures of men who made New York rise. Sing of these Mohawk giants. Sing. And the second one is called The Patron Saint of the Sublunary. The patron saint of the sublunary hovers at the threshold of stairwells and locked gates, dwells in the cracks of retrofitted beams. She keeps watch over those who bear grief's heavy silence, hold hands with those who often fall, believe the sky is too crowded, had no one to teach us what flying was. In late night diners, on slow moving trains, she searches for lost souls between hours. She carries our flight plans in the folds of her skirt. The moon knows her name. Her companions are the prevailing winds. With the sound of her footfalls, radio tower lights blink red. The borders between worlds dissolve with her keys jangle. To the many who rely on escalators, wallow in the comforts of the nest, refuse to unclench their fists, proclaim flight is a hoax. Beware. Her breath burns conceits and transmutes them to fuel, lifts feet from sidewalk, merging lives with horizons. To those with favoring minds, draw near. Refuse the ruse of enumeration. Leave offerings for her at twilight crossroads, and recognize the star marks in the palms of our hands. Thanks for listening, and now I'd like to turn it over to Cathy Hailey.
Cathy, you're on mute. Could you unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cathy Hailey, Vice President of the Poetry Society of Virginia's Northern Region. I'm also a student contest chair and love to work in support of young poets. Into the ether. Dear prosecution, you don't disappoint. George Floyd, strolling cupped foods alive, resurrects his humanity. Out of mouths of babes, those who witness, alarm at reprehensible police behavior shown in video at every angle. Desperate appeals for Derek Chauvin to change course, to no avail. Survivor's guilt. They couldn't, didn't do more. Experts state cause of death, asphyxia, in precise medical detail, simply put. Assuring any human would die under this weight. Pinpointing moment of death, last breath, as Floyd's eyes close in slow motion, on replay, revealing truth. Dear defense, your efforts may disappoint Chauvin, showing little emotion behind his mask. I hope you continue to disappoint him for the sake of America, for humanity, for Black lives, for George Floyd's family, for his young daughter, who wants to believe his father changed the world. Let it be true. I chose the next poem because I drafted it exactly a year ago today. And since then, I've thought that maybe it had lived its time. But recently, and unfortunately, it seems to be still relevant, especially in countries like Brazil, where they're exhuming human remains to make room for mounting coronavirus deaths. Dirt to dirt. Wooden caskets stack up neatly like a 3D puzzle in long, narrow trenches, mass graves on Hart Island, off the Bronx and Long Island Sound. Imagine Emma Lazarus's shock seeing images captured of her beloved sound. No merry sun in the grave sky. Unclaimed bodies. Why are they unclaimed? Are they unidentified, misidentified, lost? Have their next of kin also succumbed to the virus? So many questions, but also surprise. This process is not novel like the coronavirus. For 150 years, bodies have stacked up here at the rate of 25 per week. Not only those unclaimed, but those too poor to pay. This Holy Week, on Maundy Thursday alone, 40 dead arrived in a single day. Stacks surrounded by dirt await closure. Who will shovel the ceremonial clods? Who will operate the machinery to push massive amounts of dirt to close the grave, cover it up? Thank you. And the next reader will be Kindra.
Hello, I'm Kindra McDonald. I'm based in Norfolk and serve as the VP for the Southeastern region. This first poem has a small epigraph. The honeybee has officially been considered the most important living creature on Earth, and it will be so until it is no longer here. What I am trying to say is my brain is full of honeybees, that they are buzzing and thrumming, that they are fanning the temperature of this apiary in my head, so I am always 92 degrees. Most crime is seasonal. It started when I gargled, brushed my teeth and buzzed. I spoke in hums and soon wings caught in my lungs, fluttering. I am asking you please to blow smoke in my ear, to know the difference between a wasp and its fuzzy cousin. I am hurting. Sometimes my skin becomes so touch tender and swollen, even pollen dust burns when it settles like light on my chin. It will be a winter full of honey synapses. I will melt like sugar in your mouth. The more I think, the louder the buzz. My hands are the size of fig leaves. Have you tried to grasp a flower, stroke a cheek, when your hands are as big as fig leaves? Clumsy. The medulla is so syrupy thick, my heart becomes clogged. My arteries carry atrocities away. My veins ferry pain that is 80% sugar, but still not sweet. How it seems more possible than ever to disappear. In every picture ever taken of me, my eyes are closed. Now you can catch me lifting up, hovering, just about to take flight. What I am trying to say is listen. Thank you. This poem is inspired by Louisa's poem that she shared as a kind of a guide for us as we approached this evening. So this is Poem with an Ear Pressed to the Ground. That it would come down to the science of breathing, how the lungs receive oxygen, how a pulse becomes stilled, that it would come down to the compression of an airway somewhere between the diameter of a quarter and a dime. Shallow breaths, the equivalent of surgical removal of the left lung. Trying to breathe with fingers and knuckles under the force of 90 pounds of pressure. like sipping air through a drinking straw, that it would come down to 12 peers and chairs, palpating their own throats to feel the pulse beneath their probing fingers, the tender skin indent, the metric beat of pumping blood, an ear pressed to the ground, prone and pleading, all of us needing the one whom we all come from, who held her breath, spent and waiting for a newborn to cry, to breathe with life. Thank you. Now I'm going to welcome Joanna Lee.
Hello, I am the Vice President for the Central Region. So hello from Richmond. And this first poem is an epistle to the city. Dear Belle, our city of questionable choices, you leave me wanting. The water high, but not high enough to wash clean, gutters choked with mud. Dog shit in the parking lots that turn into high-rises. Our city, everyone wants a view from above. The eagles, for example, watch from a park where farmers are no longer welcome to sell their wares. Not that they ever should have been there. City, you are debutante queen of those who never should have been there. When was the last time you led your fellows by the hand and sat them by the river, drinking in the heron dance of early spring? Have you forgotten the smell of creosote and sun-baked stone? City, when did you last get your feet wet? Look at me. Soon there'll be no riverbank at all. Our city, who art a slave to progress, your past can't be washed down the drain and left to trickle into the James with the wastewater. Tearing down is not the same as building up. And building up, well, our city of change, you are running out of mirrors. Fix your face. Your inner circles are showing. And the second poem is titled Dehiscence, which is a sort of clinical term for a wound coming apart. Sometimes all it takes is the slightest pressure, the smallest lapse in communication between two bodies, a miscalculation of angle or look or force. The whole world wears jeans frayed at their edge. Barely breathing disturbs the cadence of waterfalls, the equilibria of countries crisscrossed by suture lines and stapled shut by hands who never studied anatomy. Listen. No wonder the view through the windshield is dark and out of focus. Everything trickles down. The sky barely misting, the gunshots closer to home, my father in his faraway wood forgetting the phone on the bathroom sink. Listen, distance is a tricky thing. Who's picking up when you're calling? What names do you cry out to the starless night? This is where it begins again. You and the rain, the songs you choose to sing when no one else hears. Breaking open, your body spilling its secrets all over the driver's seat. You see, it doesn't always smell like death. The burn in the back of the throat says something is changing, that it's okay to come apart before we are put back together. Thank you. Our next poet is Jeri Rogers.
Hi there, I'm Jeri Rogers, and I applaud all the poets that have been reading wonderful work. I am actually a publisher of poetry. I publish a poetry journal called Artemis, and Artemis is now 44 years old, and it was born out of writing workshops for abused women, and our beginnings we were trying to give voice to those that had a hard time speaking. And we have evolved to be an all-inclusive journal. And we're a charitable organization. 10% of our sales go to women's shelters here in Southwest Virginia. So we celebrate established writers, but we also encourage first-time writers to submit. One of our more established writers is Nikki Giovanni, lives here in Southwest Virginia. And by the way, that's where I'm from. I'm vice president of Southwest Virginia for the Poetry Society, and work very closely with Nikki and have since the 80s. And this year she has joined our board of directors as our distinguished poet. And we're very excited to have her on board. So I have so many different poets I could feature, but I decided to pick one of Nikki's poems to read tonight. Since we really are trying to give voice to so many different poets, newcomers and established, Nikki's poem is titled Rita Dove. And this poem speaks about Rita finding her voice back in the day. And we are pleased to have Rita Dove submit one of her poems to our journal this year. We are getting ready to release our 2021 journal. So I picked this particular poem to read, and it was reprinted from Nikki's book, Good Cry, in 2017. So the title is Rita Dove at Furious Flower 2014. A raindrop, a snowflake, a little bit of sun, a smile, a tear, a lover's laughter. Some ancestor from so far away whose dogged strength alone made the journey into freedom on the strength of a song. What really is a poem? Is it buttered cornbread, a pork chop browning, a quilt being pieced, a grandmother's tears, or maybe a desire for a new world? And grandmother, in the words of my grandmother, show them. Shall we call her Rita? And let's add an eagle. No, a dove, both beauty and ice. Shall we ask her to sing? Yes, sing a song for all of us. Sing a poem for all of us. The next poem that I chose, since we try to encourage first-time submitters and writers to join our journal, is from a young man, Justin Scribner. And we try to focus on the Appalachian region, but we say we feature writers from the Blue Ridge Mountains and beyond, and we get submissions from all over, actually the world. And our reputation has spread. And Justin was and is a very successful stage manager on Broadway. And when the pandemic hit, he realized he had not a job to go to, and also that he was a closet poet, and maybe it was time for him to come out. And he actually published a book, Every Grain of Sand, and submitted to Artemis. And we were very taken by his poetry. And the poem that we chose is called The Age of the River by Justin Scribner. Time is an illusion, they say, and though you can count the days since the ferns began to grow, and you can track the times that the water has frozen over since your childhood, and each tree that watches from overhead, casting glorious shadowed lacework on the rocks, could reveal a number of rings by which you could count how many seasons the lace has been cast. The river is only the sum of its parts. So it's more accurate to say that it really has no age. Its well-worn banks lined with countless grains of sand, infinitesimal. Each immigrated from beyond, here for maybe a century, here maybe just for now. And the water, the water is fresh every second and impossible to quantify. Flowing through, tumbling forward, flying past around this thing we call river. Every eye blink, its contents replenished in 1 minute, all new water in 100 years, all new people. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this honor of being here. And now I would like to introduce David.
Good evening. It's an honor and a little bit of a terror to follow all these good poets, especially Nikki Giovanni. I serve as the Vice President for the North Central region, and until we find a likely victim, also for the Northwest region. Encourage those of you that are not members to consider joining. I'm going to read 2 poems on the role of the poet in the civic arena. The first one I wrote a couple of years ago during the term of the previous president, when I was despairing at the legacy of my generation, the baby boomers. To the generations. I've been sitting by the unspeaking stream, asking to be unasked, trusting the stones and the water and the last calls of bird and frog. And I have decided not to decide between fault and innocence, because there is a word that has no syllable or phoneme, but lies as it tells the last truth I may hear. The sound we make together is still the same that hurt us when we gave a music to hope's story. It lies shrunken and cold, but lives in us still. I listen as the tide washes in slowly, laving its unmeaning in ripples written and rewritten in the sand, in the heart, under the morning fog. We are part of the dust that fell from burning, its ashes written on foreheads for salvation. And I am frightened for the children, that they will find life too late or in vain, that the rain that once was sweet with spring will burn. Now that we old ones near finality of images, it is certain we have failed the sweetness that we held in angry younger hands. I cannot hide inside love and warm myself with what I once thought the tide had spoken, as I lay in a bliss of silent unself, wrapped in a blanket rolled on this same western shore. Those of us who were born in the poverty of hope and fought tyrannies of blackness are gone. Those who howled the madness of city streets are going quickly. And those of us who decried the eloquence of bomb and fire have built too many of both in our aged anger. What remains to be said rests beyond my saying. This paean drips like candle wax from the archaism of abandoned cathedrals. The shadows flicker with wisdom. The sunset bursts red from under the loom of roiling brown clouds. And the word I have never found in any dictionary writes me in this prayer to those we have left behind. Sing better than I, though I will keep singing till I lie in a memory of green and hope. The second poem is a draft written for this occasion, and so I called it Poem for Our Living Breathing. Strange, angry land, I shoved dry sounds out my mouth, trying to calm the fires by naming a calming wind. My tongue thirsts for syllables like an Old Testament prophet drinking water from rocks, while all around me others eat a manna made of hatreds. Shelley said poets were the unacknowledged legislators of this world, but I cannot even vote in the election where bottled water is a crime. I meet the pandemic of distrust from behind a mask that keeps my mouth hidden so my voice can be clear. Empty words are empty hands when the climate has altered and the river rises, inundating every book I've ever levied behind me. Yeats survived Easter Sunday, but the falcon of his vision soared away in a bloody sunset. I once marched against war, but death outvoted me. It's spring now, though the deaths of the daily thousands still cry our census. The land is without honor in all our lost prophecies. Akhmatova survived the purges and may have found some peace behind the terrifying fairy tale of Stalin's Russia. I hear the last gasps of the many who cannot breathe free air and kneel in democratic prayers with patriotic ghosts. What amendment does a poet need to sing a patriotic hymn for a peaceful nation that no longer presses a uniform knee against the necks of the other? I read the constitution of our hunger and legislate by as many rejections as the daily dead in spirit. Young Wordsworth rallied to the pleasant exercise of hope and joy before the revolution ate its own children like Saturn on a bender of hate. I never had that zeal, though. There was a time I thought my words might save some part of the world. Now I sing in muted rasps, waiting the return of the falcon from the long gyre of history. My own chapter runs short. I have legislated my prayers from beneath a cherry tree. It's April now, and a cruelty of white petals drifts onto me like snow. A poet needs new songs of innocence to psalm out mercy, pity, peace, and love to a world that still needs poets. And I, like Blake, see angels singing in the streets. Thank you. It's my honor and privilege to introduce the past Poet Laureate of Virginia and a fine gentleman, Mr. Henry Hart.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. And I want to thank Louisa for organizing the event this evening. Very kind of you to get us all together. So I live in Williamsburg. I'm a professor at William and Mary, and I've been involved in the Poetry Society for the last 15 years or so, and I'm one of the executive directors. The first poem I'm going to read is about something I remember well. It occurred around 1962 when I was 8 years old. My father, during World War II, had gone to the Philippines, and then he was ordered to go to an area around Hiroshima about a month and a half after the bomb was dropped. And because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, he wanted to show me and others in my family, my siblings, what a nuclear attack was like. He wasn't supposed to take pictures of Hiroshima, but he had a little camera and he took the pictures. And so this poem is called Slides of Hiroshima. Smoke uncoils from my father's cigarette, dimming the projector's beam, the sheet taped to the living room wall. I sip grape soda, nibble a Ritz cracker. The bomb was nicknamed Little Boy, he says, raspy, matter of fact. We got orders to steamroll guns and ammo in warehouses the bomb didn't flatten. Nobody talked about radiation. I gaze at a tree's black spikes, bricks scattered like teeth around the skull of a cathedral. Smoke stings my eyes, blurs a body x-rayed on a sidewalk, a dog licking a girl's ankle stump. Outside, the moon turns the Norway spruce by our spring house to the color of Hiroshima. My father warns nuclear missiles from Cuba could hit cities near our home. I say nothing. On the hearth, our beagle gnaws a lamb bone, her teeth clicking like slides through the projector. The next poem is really a kind of elegy from a series of poems that I've been writing about shootings in the United States, obviously a huge problem. I wrote a number of poems about what happened at Sandy Hook because I felt close to Sandy Hook. I actually grew up about 8 miles away from Sandy Hook. Dawn Hochsprung, the principal who died at Sandy Hook, was actually the principal of my old elementary school, Mitchell Elementary School. Of course, that was a long time before she went to Sandy Hook, but she continued to live in my hometown. My sister-in-law, when she was the principal of my old school, my sister-in-law worked with her. My niece was in the school, knew her. My sister-in-law went to the funeral, which again was in my hometown. But this poem really isn't about Sandy Hook. It's really about dealing with any shooting, dealing with the aftermath. So you'll hear some Emily Dickinson in the poem. Begins with a memorial service after the shooting. At the memorial service, I could barely hear the student read, "After great pain, a formal feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious like tombs." Snow strafed the churchyard grass, snuffed candle flames on the forsythia. The cold seeped beneath pews. I heard, "This is the hour of lead, remembered if outlived, as freezing persons recollect the snow, first chill, then stupor, then the letting go." At home, I let batteries die in our phones, the sun white out newspapers on the unplowed drive, a neighbor's casserole freeze on our doorstep. Most nights I did nothing but stare at ice fishermen kindling fires on the lake, trains rattling your photos on the bedroom wall. The morning a hawk tore a cardinal from the last sunflower crown you hung on the deck, I placed its feathers in your urn. Remember how you joked about being buried under the marble soldier who'd lost his musket and hat in the cemetery by the lake? Yesterday, I carried your ashes through the blue and gold crocuses hatching from snowmelt around the gravestone's shadows. Wind carried you back to the cove where last summer you surprised me by drinking peppermint schnapps and swimming naked under stars. So thank you very much. And I think I'll give it over to Luisa, who will begin the open mic. At least that's my understanding.
Well, thank you so much, Henry. Those are such moving poems. And thank you, Terry, Bill, Derek, Kathleen, Catherine, Kathy, Kindra, Joanna, Jeri, and David for sharing such strong and moving words. And I'm certain if we had been able to hear, everyone has been snapping and clapping in their seats. We were chatting a little bit before we started the program and exchanging vaccination updates. And it's good to know that more of us are either done with both vaccines or are looking forward to getting ours soon. So I want to thank you all then, our participant poets this afternoon, for these poems, which are also such good medicine to take away with us. And now we move to the open mic portion of the program, and I'd like to call back Catherine Fletcher, who will introduce our open mic poets for us. Catherine.
Thanks very much, Luisa. And thanks to our poet laureate for creating this space for us to celebrate the power of the word. Thanks too to the Muse Writers Center, especially Susan Deutsch, who is running controls this afternoon. Check out the Muse's events, classes, and more at themuse-.org. You can also check out the Poetry Society of Virginia's page for events happening around the state during the month of April celebrating poetry. If you're just joining us, this is the open mic portion of Poems for Our Living and Breathing. My name is Catherine Fletcher. I do outreach and communication for the Poetry Society of Virginia. Just a reminder to our open mic readers, there is a 2-minute limit, one poem only, please. If you could be respectful of one another's time, that would be great. I'm going to start calling people by their last name. So our first reader is Sharon Ackerman. Sharon, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Sharon Ackerman. I write a lot about coal mining in Appalachia, so that's kind of where I'm focused today. This poem's called I Never Met My Grandfather. He died at 33, a coal mine death. It tore a hole in his heart, says the oral history, its tunneled line recording earth-tinted eyes, part of him that became part of me. Our family had land, a flat cliff where cousins played, its face weeping in heavy storm for men lost in rifts of rock. We wrote our names on stone graves, tracing hands in colored pencil, until rain swelled, washing blank as bone all we'd made. Brief prints and stencils melted into chasms as clouds fell in place and the waters rose and erased us. Thank you.
Thanks for window into that vanishing way of life, Sharon. Our next reader is Kathy Davis. Kathy, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Okay. I'm Kathy Davis, and my poem is called April and the Affront of Spring. Last month, Ellen shot at 22, a random campus act, police assure, that makes the evening news. Her dad, until that moment, just a guy I knew at school who stole flowers from the park to woo my roommate. Pink clipped branches from the cherries that grew so close together, each tree's blossoms blended with the next. And today, Alan, the cause my son at college emails home an accidental overdose. The chancellor's note that follows, full of measures they will take to ease the student's grief. It's not contagious, my son said earnestly at 8, leaning toward me from his chair, too small yet for his feet to reach the ground. His classmate, Alex, crumpling to the floor that day, heart stopped during jumping jacks, a fatal defect lurking hidden, but not contagious, his teachers reassured. this disaster could not spread from one child to the next. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that powerful moment, Kathy. Our next reader is Skip Keith. You can unmute yourself, please, Skip. And for those of you who are not reading, please do mute yourselves. Sharon, if you could mute yourself again. Skip, are you with us? I see you're still muted. Alrighty. Well, we'll come back to you in a moment, Skip, if you're still there. I'd like to call our next reader, William Prindle.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks, William.
Greetings from Charlottesville. And thanks to Derek for reminding me on Facebook that this was happening today. So it's great to be able to join you. I was considering the theme of this this reading. I chose a sonnet that I wrote. It was inspired by my wife, who is descended from enslaved people and Cherokee people. It's called Sonnet on Supremacy. He thought an aging husband's only job was sparing his wife housework's heavier share. For fear her hands or back with pain should throb, he took on chores she shouldn't have to bear. He shyly welcomed every hug and peck, believed his own advantages were slight, could not perceive the knee upon her neck for being a woman and for not being white. For years, her work-life brilliance was obscured by men who could not tolerate her powers. They ushered her so subtly out the door, you wouldn't know they were the worst of cowards. Now he speaks out on these supremacist tricks, preferring words he might consider sticks. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Fitting tribute. I accidentally skipped the alphabet, so Fred Levy, if you're here, if you could unmute yourself, you are next.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for Louisa for organizing this. I'm delighted to be here. This is about a year and a half ago. We had the atrocity at the Eitz Chaim, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and it's about a year and a half. And this is what this is about. The shadowy voices whisper, Christ killers. Pittsburgh and the Tree of Life. We have wandered the nomads wandering. Even our name contains the stranger's roots. We've wondered why they hate us, why they want to kill us, why they can't recognize the faces of their sons and daughters and wives and mothers and eyes no different than their own. And over the eons of blood-drenched tears, we fled from nations that expelled us, countries that forcibly converted us, peoples that raped, pillaged, and drove us to lands that would accept us, ultimately to the land of the shining lamp, Our Lady of the harbor, and the beckoning for the tempest tossed to a land of golden embrace. Here, we were safe. Even as Hitler ravaged our European brethren, we fought together with our Gentile sisters and brothers and vanquished the threat with love and boundless connection that beat back the timeless wave of rejection. Today, the papers and airwaves are filled with grief, a horror too familiar to the old and jarring and frightening to the young still unfolding. A collective chill passes through us like a death blow running across each synapse, with pain rebounding through the hate of future past. But we rejoin the lady's lamp, and shadows retreat as daylight climbs its spiritual peak, and Jew and Gentile turn to our neighbor's eyes and recognize we're here to help each other stay alive, then thrive. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that moving poem.
Thank you.
And then I see Kimberly Ray, is that you're here? If you could unmute yourself, you are next.
Hi, thank you for having this program. I'm from Loudoun County, and my poem today is called Pink Moon Rising. This is also found in my latest book called Coffee Shop Sessions 3 in the Arms of Love. Overlooking the shoreline, a deep sigh forms, releasing the exhaust of the day. Blowing in the direction of the cool breeze, I scan the shore expecting something or someone, but it never comes. The pink moon rises over the North Sea, and it hits me. This very spot, this arresting moment is what I've been waiting for. Consumed with longing, anticipation eats away at such glorious living moments. The wandering shoreline stragglers earlier in the day didn't let anticipation eat away at them. No, they planned their morning, coordinating wake-up schedules and rushing out the door, as a habit of early risings often do. Observing an intimate walk at the shoreline, she leaned into him with her interest for the day. Her restaurant of choice, how their family would visit in the afternoon, a carefully arranged pleasant day. Or perhaps it was a secret rendezvous. After confessing their undying love, they took a chance they couldn't let slip away. Their longing made their dream come true, beginning with a morning walk along the shore. Such dreams that I too once held, as they now sit and wait with this rising pink moon. Thank you.
Thanks for those lovely images to close, Kimberly. So she's the last of our open mic readers. Thanks very much to all the writers and readers today for a fabulous program of poetry. If you'd like to hear more work by Virginia poets, please do check out Luisa Igloria's collaboration with the Slover Library in Norfolk. She is featuring a poem a day by a Virginia poet every day in the month of April. And you can follow along on @Slover Library. Do check out the Muses page for classes, programs, and more, and as well as announcements coming up from the Poetry Society of Virginia, which will be featured on both our website, which is poetryvirginia.org, and our Facebook page. Will be announcing our contest winners and our book prize winner, which was chosen by Luisa as well. Thank you everyone so much for a wonderful program. Good night and stay safe.